Hey, Audio Road listener, what is your profit per mile? How about your cost per mile? Or even your bottom line? Stop driving blind and know your numbers. Profit Gauges is absolutely simple bookkeeping specifically for owner-operators. Have instant access to business and tax reports that will help you increase your profits and keep your money in your pocket where it belongs. Sign up for Profit Gauges today and take advantage of our 30-day free trial. Know your numbers and master the journey. Visit our website at letstruck.com or call our Tribe Care Team at 855-800-FUEL. That's 855-800-3835.
Your money, your taxes, your truck, and your road to success in the trucking industry. This is Trucking Business and Beyond, the show that puts the money where it belongs, back in your pocket.
Good morning, you beautiful bunch of fuckers, and welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Friday, October 4th. We are here live. It's time for a Friday free-for-all. I see Henry's here. I saw Joel was here a minute ago, but Joel's gone. Not sure what happened there. We'll see if we're going to get him back or not. I have a couple things, then we'll bring those guys in. We'll find out what's on their mind. And phone lines are open right now for you to call in, 855-950-3835. Or hit that call now button on your app. We'll get to your calls here in just a couple minutes. So the big news this week was the port strike. It's over already for now. It isn't completely settled. They did agree to a wage hike. I think they got 60-some% wage hike over 6 years. It's a pretty healthy deal. Still some other things, automation and some other things that they didn't settle, but they put them off for now. I think they extended their contract 105 days. One of the guys I follow said, don't forget about this. There's a good chance this could come back and become another strike again. I guess it happened once before with this union. So we'll keep an eye on that. Lots of speculation about why. Why did this happen so fast? You know, if they were completely at an impasse, how did it change in just a couple days? Some of the speculation is the optics just did not look good. The video of the guy claiming he would cripple the country, I don't think you wonder if he thought he was going to get support for that. And he didn't. He got a lot of backlash, really strong backlash. So that may be part of why they decided to back down. And there's also the possibility that Governor DeSantis said we'll send in the National Guard and run the ports. That may be a factor. Who knows? I'll keep an eye on it and see. But for now, your toilet paper is safe. Unbelievable. People actually went out and they were hoarding toilet paper. I just don't get it. If that's that big of a concern for you that you are going to run to Costco and try to stock up, why don't you just stock up all the time? It's such a crazy mentality. And there was no real danger of running out of toilet paper on this one. We don't import it. What else did I have? I thought I had something else. The jobs report came out today for September. And surprise, surprise, it's a very positive report. 254,000 jobs added in September. Unemployment dips to 4.1% in sign of sturdy labor market. The problem is they're going to revise this number. If you've been paying attention to these jobs numbers, they continue to do this. They come out with these really good-looking reports to support the economy, And then we find out months later that they lied. They revise these numbers and they say, well, it's an error in calculation, except the error in calculation is always showing more jobs than there really is. And imagine this, it's the last jobs report before the election, and nobody will see the correct numbers before the election. So I'm very, very skeptical of this jobs number. All right, I think that's enough. We're going to get to the calls. Let me just bring everybody in here. Good morning, guys.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Before I forget about it here with the ports and the people running off to get toilet paper, I think, it sort of verifies. I think a lot of people are full of crap.
Man, you ain't kidding. If that is the first thing they think about, oh my God, there's a strike, I need toilet paper. Maybe you should keep a couple extra rolls around. It's not that hard. It doesn't go bad. Yeah, I just that is the state of our country. That when the entire 40% of the stuff that comes into this country is about to be stuck on boats, everybody runs out and hoards toilet paper.
Well, and to me, that's a perfect segue into Joel, because I saw his one post with the exchange with the people about what you can do. Which I'm in the club with you, Joel, because I'm sitting here at 11.3 with 77,000 pounds. I'm running slower than normal because I'm milking this one. I'm running 62, which is like
You're never
snail's pace for me, but I have time, and that works out for the schedule, and I'm knocking down 11.3.
So why not, right? Yeah, exactly.
Why not? It's more relaxing, and you don't have to hit the brake pedal.
So I must have missed this exchange, Joel. What's the latest?
Well, I went through a back and forth with a guy, and towards the end of it, he said, "Well, you're just as dumb as that Kevin Rutherford."
No, I almost just spit out my coffee. I shouldn't have been drinking coffee when I asked
it. It's on X. You can take a look at it.
I can't believe I missed that, but I shouldn't have been drinking coffee when you said that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I don't know. He was about 9 miles per gallon is not realistic, and it's not possible. And I don't know, the whole little conversation I posted, the whole damn thing. I got a kick out of it. I thought it was funny.
I will.
But yeah, towards the end of it,
you can expect it to a certain point, Joel, because the reality is our averages are better than some people's best mileage on any given day of the year.
Oh yeah,
for the most part, that's
right. It's just,
but there's plenty to keep us honest on that.
But what people need to understand is, just because the majority of people don't achieve these numbers doesn't mean that it's impossible to do, or honestly even really hard to do. It's common sense. It's time management and speed management is what it is. And then just a good solid base spec, and you're gonna get these kind of numbers. And to kind of prove that with Connor in the truck, what's he had his CDL for 3 weeks, and he's averaged in the 11 mile a gallon range with 3 weeks experience. That should tell everyone that this is entirely possible, and it doesn't take any real special skill or talent. You just need to manage your time and your speed.
The other thing I wish we could
the argument I got into, like you did, Joel, on another page, was somebody that bought a used truck, and they were looking to delete their CMS system.
Oh. Okay.
Which my first question is, why would you want to? Have you seen all the lawyers' billboards?
Right.
It gets found out you get in a crash and you had that deleted. Yeah. You're done.
Yep.
So here's, I mean, there was just a nuclear verdict. I talked about that, the Freightliner truck, where it wasn't that something was deleted.
Western Star.
Western Star. It wasn't that something was deleted. It was that the owner didn't choose to put on an option that may have avoided the accident, and they a nuclear
So-
verdict over that. That's a real
So
stretch.
my brother goes through a lot of what do you want to call it? Environmental and safety audits to be considered a top tier carrier for some of our customers. And just like some of the top tier customers want to make sure that you have downsped powertrains and you have your emission compliant and all that, nowadays they're also wanting to make sure that you have all the safety stuff, or you are not they'll only use you if they have no other choice, if you don't have all the safety stuff on the truck.
I could
So that's
see
coming
that.
because of the due diligence clause. Yeah, I mean, you get in an accident, they're going to the deep pockets, and if you have a blue chip customer, they're going to cover their ass. And if you don't have this safety equipment, they're not going to load your truck. I mean, it's just starting to happen. He's had a couple of audits recently where they came in and they wanted to see what they were doing to be proactive with safety.
I'll bet.
Well, yeah, and a lot of the dealers make you sign a waiver if you delete option that stuff,
Hey,
Yep,
hey,
for
Joel,
sure.
I want to
because
go.
they've gone back on the dealers on that.
I want to go back
Yep.
to this theory of fuel mileage that 9 isn't even reasonable or possible, and nothing works, and this is all bullshit, and you're just as stupid as I am. And I just wonder if they even stop to think, would I, and you as well, how many hours, Joel? I mean, just think about this number. How many hours in your lifetime have you spent thinking about and working on fuel mileage in heavy trucks?
The majority of my day for the last 37 years.
Yeah,
I've been
really?
thinking about this stuff. And to your point, what is very funny about what you're saying here is I actually had a guy who said, look, your fuel mileage is no big deal. It's because the technology on trucks has gotten better. Well, no friggin' shit. Who the hell do you think pushed that envelope to make it better? I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. I was like, yeah, a little crazy.
I know that world.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, it's just a little crazy.
we all go back. You know what?
But I want to change careers, Joel.
Yeah.
And I think we could figure out a lot of efficiencies. With this port worker thing that was, the big news this week, when I found out the crane operators are at $300,000 a year.
So wait a minute. I heard all this bullshit too about the wages they supposedly make. Larry Kudlow, who's kind of a conservative economist guy, broke it all down, and the guys on the East Coast in the Gulf, the top tier laborers in the ports, make $39 an hour. And since 2019, when they went to $39 an hour, their today's real wage, because of inflation, is $30.29. So Larry, of all people, he's kind of siding with these guys. He said they're not wrong. Now, he didn't like the way that they done it with, threatening to shut the country down. But if that is true, that the top tier guys are only making $39 an hour, I don't disagree with them that they're worth more money than that.
Well, where'd they
You
get
live
the
in
300,000 on the? Where'd they get the?
I don't know.
Joel,
Because that's what I heard on the news.
hold on, stop
The
here.
guys on the
Stop.
West Coast.
Stop, Joel.
Okay.
Joel, it's usually
Okay.
you pushing back on me with this stuff. I don't care about the wages. Look, you're in a union, negotiate whatever wage you want to negotiate. I mean, I have no problem with that. And if you guys can strong arm, and
Right.
I'm going to use that term, if you can strong arm employers into paying more, how many people have had a pay cut since 2019? All of us. Everybody had, because of rampant inflation. So,
everybody, you're
right.
You're exactly right.
Right. So if you can go negotiate a better wage, great.
If you can get more money, you should get more money. I'm with you on that.
Absolutely. Here's where I think they're in a bind, and I even understand it. I just don't know what the answer is. The ports have to be modernized. They just have to be. It is embarrassing how our ports run when you compare them to the ports in Asia, and the throughput and the efficiency of those other ports. And when California automated their ports, wages went up. Now, of course, it's on fewer jobs. I get that. But I don't know how we can just sit back and say, sorry, we like lots of laborers making lots of money, no matter how inefficient it is. That's the bigger problem I have.
No, right, and I don't disagree with you, but here's kind of my thought on this, and we have talked about this before, and there's some components here to this that not a lot of people talk about, and I'm still of the opinion that there's a pretty major national security issue if you automate to the point where you eliminate most of the workers, and then the vehicles and the equipment that you use to automate the ports has no provision for a human worker. Look, if somebody hacks into the system on the ports and shut them down, you're screwed. If you don't have any skilled workers in there, or they can't physically get on the machines and run them. And, you know, we talk about AI all the time. What the hell if AI gets a bug up its ass and says, you know, I'm going to shut that port down? What are you going to do?
So we shouldn't modernize?
So no, I'm not saying we shouldn't, but there needs to be limits to, I think, modernization. You can't just go into it and say, let's say we had the technology to run a port 100% with no humans. I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, but I don't think anybody's saying
we should
that.
have
but let's stick to the. Eventually, we're probably going to get there in a lot of jobs, and I've talked about that, and I don't know what the future holds. That we can always keep looking back and say, wait a minute, we've been replacing humans with machines and more efficient technologies for over 100 years. And every time we do it, we end up with more jobs.
We have.
Can that continue? I don't know. At some point, it seems like, well, no. I mean, what are all these people going to do? I get that. And it bothers me too. It
seems like there's got to be a breaking point.
Right. But here was the issue here. They were calling for a stoppage to all modernization projects. None. They wanted
right, and that was an overreach. There is no doubt. And did they do that just so they had a bargaining chip to come down from that point? I don't know. Were they serious about that? I couldn't answer that. And I'm with you. I think that's complete nonsense. That's bullshit. It's dumb. That doesn't make any sense. But I think in the bigger picture, we should not leave this to businesses and labor unions. This, to me, if government has a role, this would be part of that. I don't know how it would be done, but we need to set limits within the ports and the trucking industry on how much automation is going to be allowed, you know, maybe as a percentage of capacity, because you get a bunch of trucks that they're going to haul all our food, fuel, and medical supplies. And then the North Koreans hack into that system and shut it down. What do we do?
What do we do when they hack into our banking system now and shut down our ability to buy anything, or they hacked into our fuel lines or our water?
Well, it is getting worse and worse and worse, and we're going to add on to that issue, and we don't want to do that. I don't think. I mean, I get it. There's protections out there, and we can, you know, try to build in protections into the computer systems and whatnot. But that seems like it's just a continuous battle, you know, between the good guys and the bad guys on who can hack who. And it just, to me, and maybe I'm completely off base on this, but it just seems that it's a hell of a lot harder for, say, the Iranians to come over and directly talk to a port worker and say, hey, don't do your job, versus them hacking into the system and shutting it down.
Joel, I know you like to read stuff. I want you to write this guy's name down and just go follow him on X and just read a couple of his articles from the last week. You ready?
Okay. So
you'll just search for @John, John, Conrad with a K, Konrad. He's now he's a maritime journalist. He's a former ship captain. He wrote a book on what he digs deep, and he understands all of these issues about the ports. One of the things I was shocked about, the group that this union is negotiating with is not really an American company, not even controlled by Americans. It's a multinational group, and almost everybody on the board is foreign. Yeah.
Most of the ports, if not all the ports, are owned.
Yeah.
that way.
or
'Cause
controlled.
I was surprised when
Yeah.
I found out that the British owned most of them there at one point. Remember that when that was getting sold and they were talking about some Middle Eastern
And
countries buying the ports?
and then here's another one to follow. And this guy writes really good articles about a lot of things, but it's mostly logistics and it's mostly maritime. But he's a really good writer. This one, to search for him, search at map human intent, just like all those words sound. Normal spent, just all one word. Map
Sure. Okay.
human intent. Um, between those two guys, I have learned more about ships and ports and all of these issues.
Yeah, I'll have to definitely check it out.
Yeah, really, really good information. Um, oh, I had something else I was going to talk about too. What was it? Well, I don't know. What do you guys
Wonder
have?
how
It'll come back
efficient
to
we
me.
could make a ship. I wonder how efficient we could make a ship, Joel.
You know, they've been down speeding things for a long, long time, and they're still
Wait.
two strokes too. So how about
Wait a
that?
minute. I want to. Maybe the three of us could build the first container ship that rides on foils.
There you go.
It's working it with everything else on the water. My God, did you see what it did to the speeds at the what's the big sailboat race? The
Oh yeah, I know, like that big yacht,
yeah,
not
the
World
big
Cup thing, but I know what you're talking about.
yeah,
Yeah, Volvo's heavy into that damn thing. Yeah,
right.
ocean,
Yeah,
whatever
with
it is, right? Yeah.
the World Cup or the something cup.
Yeah, I can't think of it either right now.
Volvo's they're gonna fire me for this because they're the main sponsor of the damn thing. And I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me, but I know what you're talking
You
about.
better figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
um,
Oh shoot. But yeah, they got some crazy technology in them damn boats too. That's cool stuff.
Oh, this is funny. I just did a search for famous sailing race and listen to the first one that comes up, Joel. The first one says the best epic sailing races are the Volvo Ocean Race, America's Cup. That's the one I was trying to think of. But
America's
Cup.
yeah,
yeah.
America's Cup. I knew
Yep,
it was something
you got
Cup.
it.
But how funny that Volvo, it must really be into this. They have their own race.
Oh, they're huge. They
Yeah.
are huge into that. Well, they do a lot of maritime propulsion systems through Penta,
Yeah.
Volvo Penta.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a huge player in that, and so yeah, there's a long, deep connection to the maritime industry.
Yeah, it is.
With them.
You know, we talk a lot about, wind resistance and aerodynamics and how important they are. And that one change to anything that rides on the water, this idea of riding on a hydrofoil of some kind, is like such a huge leap forward. And so if you go back to when I first tried, um, now I can't even remember the term because I'm so used to saying wing foiling now. Kiteboarding. So when we were first kiteboarding and you were on a surfboard or a wakeboard kind of device, that wakeboard has a lot of drag on top of the water. And it has to have a lot of drag because that wakeboard had to be big enough to support the weight of a human at a certain speed. So it's got to have a lot of surface. The more surface you put on, the more drag you get. So with all this drag, now in order to propel ourselves, we have to have this big kite that flies up in the wind stream. You needed that much power to pull you on this board because of all the drag. Well, once they figured out the foil, so now instead of riding on this big surface board dragging through the water, you come up on a foil that's like measured in square inches. These foils are so small, but that's all that's left contacting the water now. Your board comes completely out of the water and there's no drag, and you're riding on these little hydrofoils. And the drag is reduced so much. I don't need that big kite anymore. I can now do this with a wing that I can hold in my hand. But that's a huge gain in efficiency.
Yeah.
It's like going from
Yeah, that's
needing.
crazy.
Well, yeah, I think on the
It's
big oil tankers and all, we could put sails up on them again and use the air to help us move.
there you go. See, it's like instead of needing a big block V8, we're getting away with the little tiny 4-cylinder and going
Yeah.
faster.
So they just had done that. One of there's a container ship or something has these new modern version of sails on it, and I think that just completed its first transatlantic crossing within the last couple of weeks. I saw a big article on it.
The-
Cool looking ship,
that was
and
another.
it's all modernized, and it's pretty cool.
That was another kind of
Well,
thing.
the SS United States, which holds all the records, the blue ribbon records for crossing the Atlantic, they're looking for something to do with that. Sitting over in Philadelphia right now.
The other news in the last couple of weeks,
Yeah, there you go.
This modernization of ports and ships has kind of been in the news, but China and Russia have a joint venture, and they just did something for the first time in history. They sent a container ship over the North Pole, and it cut the transit time down by 3 weeks.
Oh wow.
Yeah. That's
Are they able to do that because of global warming?
One of the articles I read actually alluded to that, but then I follow the weather guys, and they're claiming that's all bullshit, that it's just better ship technology. And they were able to do it without an icebreaker. That was the big thing. In the past, you would have had to have an icebreaker do this. Yeah, and they were able to do it with just a regular container ship, or maybe some kind of modified, I don't know, but it was a big deal. You cut 3 weeks off of your shipping times, and that's quite a deal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Pretty cool.
And
The rooster cruisers.
Well, and let's think about this. If you've cut 3 weeks off the time, how much fuel did you save? You had to have saved a tremendous amount of fuel. You now need far fewer ships and crews, and the cost have to be cut dramatically when you do that.
I wonder what the associated risk is, though. Something going bad. Sure, they made it through once, but you pretty much know you're going to go straight across the Atlantic or the Pacific without a whole lot of issue. It just seems like that might be a pretty dicey trip to be making over the North Pole. I don't know, but maybe it's not. But it seems like it would be.
Does anybody remember the Titanic?
With the yeah, but that didn't go across there. With today's technology, I believe they'd know there's an iceberg up there.
Do you think we'd have a little warning?
I don't know. They didn't. They took a bridge out, so.
Or
exactly.
Just ice pack itself. You know that who was the English guy that was up in the northern Canadian region there that they got iced in like that and crushed all the ships and not that today's ships aren't better, but I just man, I don't know. You better know what the hell you're doing to go across the North Pole. That's a scary thing in my mind. Yeah.
It's interesting that
being they have a hard time navigating out of the Baltimore harbor.
Yeah. Well, when I was living in Orlando, so this is more than 20 years ago, but it's fairly recent in my mind. A friend of mine had started as a pilot at Continental, and then he ended up in management. Yeah, and I remember talking to him. He was going back to co-pilot a flight, and the reason he was doing it was the first time Continental was sending a plane from Orlando to China, and they flew over the North Pole to get there. And that was not the norm at all. In fact, but that cuts a ton of time off of travel when you can go over the North Pole rather than all the way around.
Yeah, well, that's why they send ballistic missiles over.
Yeah, that's right.
That makes sense. So
that's right.
I get it.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom from Idaho just sent a thing on X that said if I spent half the day thinking about working on fuel economy, it would have been 162,060 hours.
Yeah.
that I've spent thinking about fuel efficiency.
Yeah. And now multiply that by 3, because that's kind of what all 3 of us have done for a long time. And would we continue
Right.
to do that if nothing ever worked?
No, and
Right.
you know, Joel, you probably start out every day when you start your run with the same thought process that I do. My goal is on any given day, if it's snowing and I'm in the mountains, I plan on doing better on fuel while it's snowing in the mountains than I ever did in the mountains while it's snowing.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's an
You're
everyday thing.
looking to have a personal best every day. That's what you wake up in the morning, you just
Yeah.
kind of look around and say, okay, how am I going to make today better than yesterday? And yeah, no, you're exactly right.
I will say, though, my criteria yesterday, since I was kind of physically exhausted, I've been kind of physically exhausted all week. My criteria was yesterday was, can I read more pages than I normally do in a day, because I wasn't getting off the couch.
There you go.
Yeah, but you had a goal.
I did have a goal, and I did get a lot of reading done.
And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And no matter what position you're in, as long as you have a goal,
So-
it's, you know,
that's right.
Did
a
you
lot of
break a
times
record?
we
No,
start
I don't
feeling
know.
sorry for ourselves, and we don't set them little goals throughout the day. You know, things get bad. So that's
That's
a good
right.
thing.
That's right. All right. What else you guys got? Anything?
Well, everybody's kind of seen the post I've been laying out there, because Trav and Connor ran an entire 2-week dispatch, and they were heavy the entire week. And the goal was to break 11 miles to the gallon, and they did. They come in at 11.23 over, I don't know, roughly 7,000 miles over the 2 weeks, and they averaged 72,000 and some change on the gross combination vehicle weight.
You know, I
They done
just
all right.
I just thought of something. Wouldn't it be nice if we could take all the people that have ever tried to say none of this works, it's all bullshit, it's all snake oil, these guys are idiots? Wouldn't it be nice to just take one day and get like 10 different trucks, but identical trailers and loads, and fuel them all up at the same time, and drive this distance, whatever it is, 5,000 miles. We always fuel at the same time, and to see at the end what the results would be. There would be trucks in there that would
Well,
still
sort
get
of-
5 miles to the gallon, because we see them out there. And we would have trucks like this getting 11 miles to the gallon. If somebody physically could follow that and watch how much less fuel you put in the truck, I wonder if they would finally get it.
We kind of did that with the NACA
I know.
run on less.
Right. And who's reading that, though? You know, with all the work they've put in, that organization, who, I mean, hardly anybody knows who they are or what they're doing.
So to me, when we talk about NACV, the problem with those guys is they don't want to hurt any feelings, and they don't want to offend anybody. They don't want to put any names out there. They'll put the data out, but they don't want to run the risk of making one OEM maybe looking slightly better than the other OEM, and they're not out there enough consistently enough. They should do that NACV competition with named OEMs every year, and everybody would get better at that point, because ain't nobody going to want to be at the bottom of that list. And you can bet your ass that the bean counters at Freightliner, PACCAR, Volvo, Navistar International, they're all going to go with the engineers going, don't you lose this. And you watch how fast things get good.
Joel,
but they won't do that. And
that is a great point. And it made me think of something. I wish NACV, I was around when NACV was formed. I remember their very first press release, and I reached out to them and wanted to be a part of it. And I said, I will help with the owner-operator part of this equation. Unfortunately, on the first board meeting, they invited OIDA in to kind of represent the owner-operators. From what I understand, it went horribly wrong right from the very first meeting. And then they kind of
Surely not.
just dropped the whole owner operator thing. But I did eventually, well, actually, it was the second year. Mike reached out to me and I spoke at their annual convention the second year. Joel, I know both of you guys have worked with them. Here's what I wish they would have done. Because one of the first things I saw, Joel, is what you're just talking about. In order to get the organization started, they went to these companies that they now don't want to piss off. There was a real conflict of interest there when you're being funded by these companies and you don't want to put anything negative out about them. You've compromised the whole mission. I wish they would have taken the model that Consumer Reports uses. Consumer Reports, I've followed their stuff for decades because they don't have those conflicts of interest. They'll say whatever they want to say about every product they test.
Right.
And no, I'm with you.
I don't disagree. And to me,
had they turned this into a competition,
whole problem.
Yeah. Had they turned this into a competition, it would have been awesome. We love competition. We would get excited about that. Who's going to win this year?
Yep.
Well, part of the problem, to me, from what I've heard, if they do that, then the OEMs build a ringer where all the bearings are real loose, everything. But
you mean they might
after that 2 weeks, the thing's no good.
You mean they might
because
cheat?
Competition has a way of doing that. Sort of like, the perfect race car engine blows up on the cool down lap because it used everything up.
Yeah. Yeah. Or we have to test athletes for doping. I mean, we know, we get it. If you can cheat, somebody will.
For sure. But competition's a good thing, and in general, it would certainly drive our industry to new standards and heights. We're just so used to accepting the status quo, especially owner operators. They almost wear that like a badge of honor. I'm average. Yippee.
I'm a 4 1/4.
They're the quintessential, participation trophy type people. They're average. They're proud of it. And if you talk about being better than average, well, you're just bragging and you're an asshole and you're the problem because you're talking about being better than everybody else.
Let's think about
that. Was the question that was in my mind the better part of the day. The other day, I got up and I was walking around the truck stop and looking around and just seeing different trucks, and that's just something I do. And like, how's one tire wearing versus another, whatever. But I was looking around at how a lot of the equipment was spec'd and set up or idling when it was 63 degrees out, which I couldn't figure out either. But why would you purposely build a truck to make less money? I can't even begin
hold on, Henry,
to understand that.
Let's go back to why we started this conversation. Joel, you just mentioned, we'd be so much better off if we could compete a little bit, we'd advance. Let's go back to how bad it really is. You and the three of us probably have close to a combined 100 years of experience doing this. I mean, we have kind of devoted a lot of time to this, and yet we still have to deal with people who deny all physics, who deny that there's anything to any of this. That's how bad it is. It's not that we're not advancing. We have people refusing to believe that any of this even works.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, it is. How are we still there after 3 or 4 decades of this? We were the idiots that were
no, Kevin, I'll go farther. How were we ever there? When you look at the old ads, from the 50s and the 60s, and it was all about efficiency, lightweighting, being able to haul more material. All that was the key to the advertisements. And that's what people, back then, I don't think in the 40s and the 50s, they were trying to be more efficient than the last.
Yeah, not anymore.
Somewhere in the 60s we got lost, I think.
Yeah, something happened.
50s through the 60s is where I think we got lost.
All right. Should we take some phone calls?
Absolutely.
All right. Looks like the first one's for you, Henry. We're going to go to Indiana. Jerry, good morning.
Well, just hang up on everybody else. I'm going to take the rest of the show. I'll be your co-host for the rest of the show. I've got 4 things actually, and
4.
later I'm going to piss Joel off. So I'm going to reinforce Joel's automation. Probably
Okay.
5 or 6 years ago, I loaded a load of water at Nestle's in Indianapolis, and we had a regular shipper that required the loads to be decked. So we carry in those trailers. We're on 2-foot center logistics posts, and we had to carry 26 of those logistic bars, those decking bars. They're like an aluminum 2x4. Well, anytime we go to a shipper that didn't require them, we just put them clear up in the front, no problem at all. And I swept the trailer out, and I carried all 26 of those bars clear up to the front of that trailer, and I created a false bulkhead with some of them in that first bar, and then stacked the rest of them behind there. I backed up the dock at Nestle's in Indianapolis. And I sat there, and finally the door beside me opened up, and the guy hollered, "Hey, you need to come back here." And he said, "We can't load you." I said, "Why not?" "Well, we can't load you. We can't load you." I said, "With those logistics bars up in the front." I said, "No, they're fine. I know it's a load of water. You're not going to take all the floor space. There's plenty of room for them up." No, you don't understand. We cannot load you with those logistics bars up front. Because they load it with a robot, and the robot would not enter the trailer with those logistics bars clear up in front. I said, "Well, fine. We'll just put a piece of cardboard so the robot thinks it's the front of the trailer." "Oh, hell, you don't understand. It won't do that." I said, "Well, just program it for a 48-foot trailer then. Just put 48-foot in there instead of a 53. "Well, yeah, that's fine. If you want to wait a week for somebody to show up and reprogram it, that's fine. But anyway, I had to pull up out of the dock, take all 26 of those bars out, lay on the ground beside the dock, back up, get loaded, pull up, and put all 26 of those bars back on the back of the trailer. And there was almost enough room left behind that load of water to put the bars lengthwise, but they wouldn't load me with them up in the front."
Yep.
So I
knew somebody,
a human being.
I knew somebody that had 48-foot trailers that was hauling stuff like that, and they could haul more than the other people because their trailers were lighter, but they couldn't load the 48-foot trailers because of that very same reason, and they had to retire the trailer.
Well, if you had a competent individual there to reprogram it, then so anyway, I just wanted to, I'm going to piss Joel off later, so I wanted to reinforce his assertion there. Next on my list is a mechanical question that you folks will probably be able to answer. I've been doing this a long, long time, and when you're driving up and down the road, shit happens once in a while. And I have had to cage a brake and pinch off an airline to get somewhere to get a part to fix it. I'll have a piece of road debris pop up and break a fitting or whatever. Can you, in fact, cage disc brakes the same as you do a drum brake?
No, but you shouldn't.
I haven't had to do it.
Well, you shouldn't have to.
They got the same kind of chamber on them, Kevin. I think you could.
But wouldn't they default to not braking?
Well, any brake cage work, any brake does that. But if you just need to move it into a bay or whatever to be able to move the vehicle in the parking lot and cage your brake, yeah, you can still cage the disc brakes.
Well, don't disc brakes still have a spring chamber on there? So if you lose air to that spring chamber,
no, right,
you got to cage it to move it.
Now I get it. Yeah, you're right.
You can cage it.
Right. Yeah, there's no reason why that process hasn't changed at all.
Okay. Well, I think of the stupidest things running down the road, and I think of these disc brakes that, how in the hell would you ever cage them? But they've got a chamber on there similar to what the drum brakes look like. So that's why I asked. So.
Yep. I haven't had to do it.
Now, well, I mean, you hope not. You never have to, but shit happens, and just be able to cage it and get somewhere, and get off the highway. So, which has happened. I mean, I have had to do it before, and think of how many drivers are running down the road that don't have a clue how to do it. But that's another story yet. So,
let's not go there.
Kevin, I got to ask you a favor. I need a favor from you now, Kevin.
All right.
You know, if you walk in I usually use a whorehouse as an example, but let's use a bank, and you walk in a bank and there's 4 tellers there, and you don't want to piss off the other 3 tellers when you pick one, but you got to pick one, even though you know the other ones are going to be pissed off because they think that you don't think they're competent enough to handle your transaction. So in this particular case, I want to favor you. I want you to completely mute Joel's in and out audio because I don't want him to hear this. I don't want to piss him off. I like Joel. He provides a lot of good information, but I want you to mute him so you won't. Anyway, I don't want him to hear this. So, Henry, here's my question for you. I've heard you talk a lot about your truck, and the analogy I would make is that it's kind of like marrying a very attractive foreign woman, and then you turn around and find out that neither one of you speak the same language. Now what the hell do you do? So October 1st, Tuesday, I committed to a 2023 Freightliner Cascadia with a DD 15 455 horse, a 13 2-axle, 216 rear end. So I'm the proud owner of a Freightliner Cascadia now, and I don't know how to speak its language at all. So my question to you, you have numerous times you have mentioned a website that you could go on and put your VIN number in and learn all about your truck. What was that website?
It's an app. It's an app for your phone, and it's the Freightliner Smart Source app.
Smart Source app.
Freightliner Smart Source, and then you click on the menu in the corner. It'll have training, and then it has training by VIN number. And for some reason that we haven't figured out, the videos are loading really slow. So be patient.
Okay.
But it's working. But you'll think it's not.
Patience, like the 2 buzzards sitting on a telephone pole. Patience, my ass. I'm going to go kill something.
That's right.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, I haven't seen that one in a long time.
Okay. Well,
Jerry, you must be old.
No,
and really, the real key to this with and all that stuff is to really drive it like a manual without driving it manually.
Okay.
So
I'm going to have a hell of a learning curve.
Well, you know, if you take off in a manual 10-speed, right? If you're in the lower side of the gearbox, do you floor it?
Nope.
Don't do it to this either. Look at no, but people do on these. Then it starts over revving all the gears and jumping around, and they're like, "Well, this thing's stupid." Well, no, you're over revving all the gears because it can't shift that fast. Neither could you.
Okay. Well, I'm just very, very apprehensive about my learning curve, but I guess I don't have a choice.
No, you'll be all right. It's really common sense. So you get around the people that sell them to you, and you hear all the marketing about how smart the transmission is, how smart this is, and all this intelligence that's in the truck, and it really throws drivers on the wrong curve because the truck is not at all smart or intelligent. But then I get around the drivers, and they're telling me how stupid it is. So somebody's wrong, right? They're both wrong. It's operating on logic.
Okay.
So if you do something stupid with the throttle and you put a junk input in, you're going to get a junk output, right?
Yep. Well, I've had this truck for 18 and a half years and almost 3 million miles, and I think the learning curve is going to be rather dramatic, but I'm willing to try.
Jerry,
I just think.
Stop being
don't try. Be Yoda. Do or do not.
Stop being so patient.
Get a hold of me on Facebook. I'd love to help you through this because once you get the basics of it, all of it starts making sense.
You'll have this figured out by the end of the first afternoon.
Well, I ain't got it yet, so I don't know. I'm not sure when I'm going to go pick it up yet, Kevin. And you know, it's you guys will laugh. You guys will laugh about this, but you know.
Before you go farther, the one thing I want you to know to protect the clutch. Every time after you take off, every time you let off the brake, if you're sitting at a traffic light, it's trying to engage the clutch. Don't do that. Okay. So most fleets end up replacing the clutch around 400,000. 2 different owner-operators, one of them you know, Kevin, the Pingles, they both made it $1.2 million on the original clutch.
which is what you should get.
But if you're sitting at a light, put your left foot on the brake and keep it there. Because every time you release that brake, it's a pneumatic throw-out bearing behind a traditional clutch, just like we always knew.
Oh. Okay. Well, that's good advice.
Because remember, it's not an automatic; it's an automated manual, and there's a big difference.
Automated manual, yeah. Okay. Well, I'll be damned. Okay. Oh, I'll learn it, but I guess what's really interesting, and you guys will laugh at me for this, is next month I've still got one more trip to make in this truck, but next month it'll be kind of interesting to be able to go to California for the first time in 4 years legal.
Oh, what's the fun in that?
There you go.
We've had a regular run out there. I've been doing 12 to 15 times a year, and I'm only one in our fleet that's stupid enough to go out there. And I've still been going out there in a 2007 truck with a Signature 600 Cummins engine in it. Never had a problem yet. So
we're gonna start referring.
It's nice to be legal for a change.
We're gonna start.
What features you're going to want to know on that when you get to the app are things like descent control, how IPM works. If that truck happens to have an adjustable IPM, you can use that to greatly enhance your fuel mileage and really get in on them details. And then anytime that the truck's not responding the way that you think it should, think about how you messaged it and what it heard. And you'll get through it in no time.
All right.
And Joel would agree with that.
All right, Jerry, the outlaw.
Yeah,
what else you got?
Oh, hell, he's still on. Damn it, I told you to mute him.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I didn't mean to. You put out a lot of good information, Joel. I didn't want to piss you off, but I thought about a Volvo very, very seriously. But driving down the road, I took my left-hand boot off and my sock off, and I just was not comfortable riding with that left-hand bare foot up on the dash. I couldn't do it.
Oh, boy.
I
Here
hear
we
you.
go.
I hear you.
Here we go.
All right.
There we go.
Well, I appreciate all the time. You've been very, very helpful. I truly appreciate it. I tell you, it's just been a wealth of information. I'm jumping into the real world feet first, and bought the truck for my October 1st. Happy birthday to me. I made the decision I told him to date the paperwork on October 1st just so I could have it on my birthday. So
There you go.
Well,
When you get it,
awesome.
when you
There
get
you
it,
go.
we're on the air. Call us.
Congratulations.
We'll coach you down the road.
yeah, I may need to. Trust me. I was so grateful that Henry was on today. I listened right there at the beginning to be sure he was on because I needed to know. So.
All right. Good stuff.
All
We'll
right.
talk to you soon. All right. Before we go to another call, I'm glad this came up. So help me with this, guys. I would venture to say that hands down, I have taken more calls on the air over the last 18 years, however long I've been doing this now. I have taken more calls about a Series 60 12.7 than any other engine. Would you guys say that's probably a fair statement?
I would say that's fair. It's probably fading now, but yeah, I'd say it's fair.
Right. For years and years, is the most popular engine by far. We talked about it all the time. I've taken tons of calls. We've built them. We've spec'd them. We've modified them. We've worked with that engine a lot. Now we spec a lot of Volvos. Right, Joel?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
When you guys are working with either one of those two engines, the 12.7 or today's Volvo, and that's all I'll say is just today's Volvo. Has anybody ever said, well, isn't this engine too small?
that displacement was a major hurdle to get over early on. And I'll tell you why the 12.7 or even the 11.1 had such success, and I think kind of getting over that hurdle. That was, for all intents and purposes, the first modern diesel engine design that we bumped up against.
No doubt.
It had the right engine architecture or better engine architecture. They got a lot of things right with that engine.
Yeah, they did.
And so it performed much better than what people expected. And it's kind of why I'm kind of baffled at times when I get pushback from a lot of people on some of the things that Volvo's doing, and even some of the things that the new DD15 is doing, and the new S13 International. They say, oh, that stuff doesn't make that much difference, but it's all the same stuff, just on steroids, that
Right.
Detroit done back
Right.
in the day with the 11.1, and had a whole lot of success with it. So
And
a
so,
lot of it does have to do with the details.
yeah, and I get it. When it was released, it was a small engine. We talked about it some, but that was 50, am I right? 50 years ago? Is that engine that old? 80s?
No,
40,
it's not
40,
50.
it's
It
40.
was like
close to
87 or so.
Mid 80s
Yeah,
is when they,
86
yeah,
or
so
7, I believe.
40
Yep.
years. So that was 40 years
Yep.
ago. Let's think about that. Many of the drivers we're arguing with
Yep.
about this stuff today weren't even born. So,
Well,
but so we've had 40
the bi-
years of that. But let's think about this. When we talk about speccing a Volvo, does anybody ever say, why would I get a D13? That's a small engine. But the other day, I'm working with somebody on a Freightliner, and when I mentioned a DD13, they're like, oh no, the dealer told me not to get that. Why would I spec that little engine? Where does that attitude come from?
well,
Why do we think
there's two ways, and the
DD13
strategy is a little
engine?
different, because in the case of the 13 and the 15, a lot of that's marketing that gets pushed on the salespeople. Either want to work out built 13s, but the 15, they're doing it without stressing it nearly as much. And most of it really has to do with perception and resale value.
It's perception.
Which
That's
I
what
don't
I'm
agree
getting
with.
to here.
Yeah.
How did we get to this perception when two of the engines I've talked about the most for decades are 13-liter engines? And we've never talked about them as though they were small engines. But all of a sudden, if there's a 15 available, now the 13 becomes small. Here's another one. I really think one of the
what I always compare it is like Formula One engine versus NASCAR. They're about the same horsepower, but one's really small.
Right.
So cubic inches or liters. I don't know why we gave them liters. I really liked cubic inches. It just sounded cool. It's America. But anyway.
Well,
but aside from that, it's how much air and fuel you can move through the engine, and the size really doesn't matter. I mean, it's what architecture you go through to get there.
That's my point. Why do we always respond to look, Joel, I've talked about this, and you talk about it. Your brother's done it. I like the 11-liter in a lot of cases. I loved the 11.1.
Me too.
The D11 in the right operation. Now, I will consider that moving to a smaller engine. It's not that it's that big of a deal. I think there are some operations that really do well with it, but I've never understood why. Here's another engine that I think we missed the boat on. I think the C12 could have been a fantastic engine. We just kind of ignored it because, no real truck driver would choose a Cat C12. Why would we do that?
I knew people with them. They did fine.
I think that was a fantastic engine.
Talk about perception and reality, and it's kind of odd. So and I owned a ton of two-stroke Detroits back in the day, just a ton of them. And when you start to look at the actual size of those engines, displacement-wise, they're pretty tiny. So
yeah,
they were small.
Or for most part, you think about a 1271. Oh my God, that's a huge engine. It's a 12-cylinder. It's less cubic inches than the 855 Cummins.
Right.
Cam. It was
Right.
852 cubic inches versus 855.
Yeah.
The 8V92 Detroit. It's a big V8 and it's this and it's that.
No, it's
not. 11-liter engine.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, there's the perception is reality, and when people look at just the number of cylinders and don't necessarily know that, even though it's right in front of them, 8 times 92, but it is what it is. And Detroit done one hell of a job when they came out with the 60 series and converted from 4-stroke to 2-stroke. They got a lot of things right. And I think Penske drove most of that. I think he got.
You know what though, Joel? I
done some
think
things with that.
the poor Silver 92, which was really the first electronic engine.
Yeah.
There just wasn't that many of them.
Hey,
To me, with what they know now and what I know about 2-strokes, I wish they hadn't pulled the plug on the 92.
I don't disagree with you.
that was my first engine. But Joel,
I
you
don't.
just said something, and I'm wondering if I've gone all these years and didn't know this. You can multiply those two numbers and you get what, the cubic inches?
Cubic inches, yeah. So an 892 is 92 cubic inches per cylinder. So
Yeah.
Yep.
I
1271,
never knew
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And it's
Interesting.
16
Yeah.
P149. Yeah, that's
Huh.
cubic inches per cylinder.
The
That's
50,
exactly
the
what that
53s
is. So,
were 53 cubic
your-
inches a cylinder. Yeah.
Your 6V92 that you had,
Right.
Kevin, that wasn't much bigger than a big block Chevy.
I was just going to say, isn't that like a 426?
It's 552 cubic inches.
552. Okay.
It's an itty bitty little thing. Itty
And they
bitty
did,
little
and
thing.
they did
Yeah.
for what they were. They did good.
I really.
Well, they had twice as many power strokes
Yeah.
per
Yeah.
revolution because it's a 2-stroke instead of a 4-stroke. So technically, the thought was we don't need as much displacement, and they weren't wrong.
And I
So,
grew up.
And they were naturally EGR.
Yeah. And I grew up
Of course,
racing two-stroke motorcycles. So for me, all that fast shifting was just natural.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
No, they were
That's how it
responsive.
works.
Yeah, they were. And I have to say, I don't think there's ever been an engine that I like the sound of better.
So
Oh no, there's
of the 8V92 when they went to electronics and they went to the bypass
silvers.
blower. So yeah, when the engine would get up to speed, that would bypass the blower and run strictly off the turbo. I'll tell you, they were impressive engines. And yeah, you're right, Henry. It's unfortunate that they pulled the plug on them like they did because they pulled
Because
very
what's
well,
funny is,
and they got decent fuel efficiency at the time.
to me, from what I've read, it looks like the future of diesels, if they're to be around, is 2-stroke. Because shockingly, I found out they're cleaner, Kevin.
Yeah, that is shocking because I'm assuming that's why the first time I went past a motorcycle track and heard this odd sound, and I thought, that sounds like a 4-stroke. What is that? I had no idea we had converted everything over to 4-strokes again. Yeah, and I have figured that was just emissions because you're burning oil. It's probably a little harder to clean up the exhaust when you're burning oil.
Yeah, but that's why the diesel needed the supercharger, which really wasn't a supercharger. It needed it for scavenging because there's no vacuum in a 2-stroke unless it's going through the crankcase like on your motorcycle.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. All right, let's grab a call because
to pump it.
They've been waiting a while. Rick in Wisconsin, what can we help you with today?
Well, good afternoon. I have
Hey, Rick.
efficiency question.
I'm
sorry. Is that better?
There you go. That's much better. Thank you.
My bad. Okay, so 1.2 million on my 2015 Pack RMX 13.
Whoa!
And
congratulations.
I try and be efficient. Thank you. At 700,000, I had to have a cylinder kits put in it because the head gasket blew out, and then the liner shifted and a leak coolant. But up till then, I was only 8 cents a mile on maintenance, including tires. Since then, I'm about 18 cents a mile. I still think it's better than a payment on a new truck. 7.05 miles per gallon lifetime on it, thanks to Kevin's app. I know that. Still have the original clutch, but what I just recently had done was I was losing fuel economy about half mile per gallon. Never had the DPF cleaned. So I had that cleaned. It wouldn't pass on the machine, so they replaced it.
The DPF was never cleaned in 1.2 million miles?
Well, this was almost a year ago now, so 1.1 million. Yeah. No,
Wow.
I never cleaned. I used a catalyst, Pittsburgh Power, iron oxide stuff. And I never was forced. Never had to do a park regen unless it was to clear a code for something that was wrong.
Interesting.
Always did passive regens.
Yeah. Nice.
But I was stuck. So then I finally got while I was driving it made me park and do a regen. So I was getting nervous about the DPF. I probably should have tried a different way to have it cleaned other than at the dealer, because they would only do the blower. They wouldn't do any sonic test cleaning or anything, or liquid cleaning of it. They would, and just barely failed. But anyways, that's $4,000 or actually $9,000 ago, and almost a year ago. But since then, now I've had to have my radiator replaced again, my turbo last week, and I got the new turbo from a rebuilder. I had to drive 3 hours to go get it because the dealer wanted me to wait 8 days and pay $8,000 for their turbo, just for the part. So I found one at half that rebuilt one, and that was a rebuilt too from the dealer. But I found a rebuilder that was 3 hours away in Chicago. I drove down there, got it, came back. Next day I was moving again. But I have 5 less pounds of boost and 50 less pounds. I only got 400 horsepower now. I don't have the 455 this thing came with, and I used to get 36, and I'm only getting 31 now pounds of boost. And the dealer says it's nothing they did. The rebuilder says all those Packars are the same turbo. There's nothing they could do about it. But so I'm kind of stuck between two places because I didn't have it all done at the dealer.
How do you know your horsepower? Are you just calculating that from boost?
I used Kevin Rutherford's scan gauge, and there's a horsepower pit on there.
You can't trust that.
It's a calculated value. I know it's a calculated value, but that's what it's maxing out at, and I feel less. When I had the turbo code setting, it automatically put a torque reduction code in there, and the horsepower was less, and the boost was less on your gauge.
Okay.
Your scan gauge. Then so that tracks that it's less. So it's not putting out a 455, and because 5 pounds less of boost, that calculates to about 50 pounds of horsepower
I don't
too.
want to
so
sound.
I think that tracks.
I always try to go back to the simplest answer possible in the beginning when we're troubleshooting something. Is it possible when we put this thing back together, we just ended up with a boost leak somewhere? Has anybody checked?
Yes.
Smoke test and pressure
the dealer
test?
says it's installed properly.
No, hold on.
I don't know
hold on.
They did not do a smoke test.
Or a pressure test. When the dealer says it's installed properly, that is not telling me that there's no leak. If he tested for a leak and said, look, that we pressure tested the charge air cooler, it's not leaking. We smoke tested this, which they don't do. This is such a rare thing. But the first thing I would try to eliminate here is the fact that we just have a boost leak somewhere.
That's a good point, Kevin. I did not I do that myself at the house, and I haven't done it in about a year since I had the air changed out.
I was gonna say, especially if you just done the radiator.
Right.
Is that correct?
Well, the radiator was 2 weeks before, and the boost change didn't happen until they
the
did
turbo.
the turbo.
Yeah, but we had the whole intake system apart. I mean, it's very possible that there is a boost leak.
It's what it's almost
I agree.
like to me. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll do a smoke test, but wouldn't I hear a 30-pound boost when I hear that extra 5 pounds? No.
I've seen so many systems that won't hold pressure at all when you try to test them, and there's no visible clue anywhere when the engine's running.
Yeah, I had one like it.
All right. Yeah, I went to Home Depot, got my own plug off, so I'll do that at the house.
Give that a shot.
Test.
Yeah, because
So I'll do
everything
that.
else that's going through my mind is not simple. I don't know of any other simple answer why you lost boost.
Unless it got
Same
stuck
fuel
on a
economy.
code.
Well, that's what I mean. If it's some
I
sort
looked-
of
I-
electronics, a sensor, it's going to be much harder to troubleshoot that. So let's get the easy stuff out of the way first.
I agree. I'm trying to get back. The dealer said they would hook up the scan tool one more time for free and make sure there's no other reduction codes in there. But they wouldn't say that they would do a leak check for free. I paid them labor and provided my part. But
Right.
you're surprised how many O-rings they charge you for, though, when you bring in a turbo.
Well,
They had to take the EGR cooler off.
The model is built so that they make some money on labor, they make some money on the part. And if they can't make the money on the part, they want to make it up somewhere else.
Yeah, and I asked them about that when I was talking to the service counter, and he said, "Oh, it don't matter. You can bring your own parts, and we don't care either way." But I've been an auto tech, and I know that
Correct.
your
Yeah.
ability to keep your doors open depends on you need to sell parts and labor.
That's right.
So the EGR cooler, they said, was pretty clean. I kind of was wondering why it must have just been off, and I'm like, no, the same reason I didn't have my DPF cleaned for 1.1 million miles.
Well,
I
what's
used the
odd
catalyst.
here on the 1.1 million miles? Now I understand catalyst helps to eliminate soot, but it doesn't eliminate ash. And the ash is going to be there regardless of what chemical treatment you're putting in the fuel.
Correct.
You're going to have ash, and they didn't tell you how much restriction was in the system, did they?
Yeah, I got
It almost
the test
sounds
back.
to me. Go ahead.
They did tell me what the bench test results were for the restriction.
And you got a before and after number on that?
Yeah, so before and after, and the after was just barely failing. Like they thought maybe they could clean it again and it would pass, but it was kind of a risk, and it would be another $300. So
here's what I'm going to tell you on
go ahead
this.
and replace it.
On these damn DPF builders, and I know a lot of people are going to lose their mind, and I actually learned this from some guys at UPS. They wet wash, and they don't go out and advertise the fact that you can literally pull a DPF filter out of a truck and wet wash it. So you can literally wet wash them things, and they will flow as long as you dry them good. After you're done, they will flow just like brand new. And we've wet washed for years. Since DPFs first came out, we've been wet washing. Have never had an issue, and I just would be curious as to know how much restriction you had, because I got a feeling that was impacting your fuel efficiency, even though it wasn't calling for throwing a code or calling for a change. We have I think we're looking at 3/4 of an inch restriction on that. Is kind of our trigger where we'll take it in. Truck comes in for service, and we'll look at how much restrictions in there, and if it's over 0.75, we're going to do a regen on it to try and drop that number under 0.75. And I think Volvo says it's 1.25, but we know that when we're at 0.75 under restriction, that we see a decrease in fuel efficiency. So we always try to keep them under.
Joe, what do you wet wash it with?
Water. We put
I didn't know. I didn't know if you put any. I didn't know if you put an agent in it at all.
Yeah, we just put a wide angle tip on a moderately powerful pressure washer. You don't want to get too strong, and you don't want like a 0-degree nozzle on there, because you'll cut into the substrate and screw everything up. So just a wide angle tip. It takes a little bit of time to get it washed out, but we wash them out, and then we've got a little bracket that we made that we set the filter in it, and we have a torpedo heater, and we just blow heat through it for about 3 hours until they're good and dry before we we stick them back in, and we have done that since day one, and we have never had a problem with them, and they always flow just fine. So I know there's a lot of
I
systems
should have went
out
to
there, and a
DPF.
lot of yeah, you probably would have been better off. The dealers make a ton of money off this shit, and I hate it when people call dealers dealerships, but I get it. Then right here's an example of why are they charging like this? Because they can.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
got people convinced that you can only blow air through it. You can't do anything else. There's no other way to clean them, and
We've gone through
it is what it is.
we've gone through the process that they use at DPF Alternatives, and it is an incredibly detailed, multi-step process with lots of things going on. And obviously, Joel, you guys have made big improvements with a really low tech way of doing it as well.
Sure. Well, and here's the thing. Would we ever open up our shop to outside work doing it this way? Probably not. So
Right.
I understand exactly why DPF Alternatives, because they need to cover their ass and make
Right.
sure that everything is done 100% right, because if it comes back, you have to have answer for your customers.
Yep.
Could I say, well, Jim Bob didn't quite move the wand on the pressure washer right, so you got to plug DPF? That's not going to cut it. You know what I mean?
That's right.
But internally
Right.
for us, it works just
Yeah.
fine. But I 100% get why DPF does what they do. What the ones that I really have problems with is when they want the air knives and the baking and all that stuff that just runs the cost up on this to an incredible amount. And it's to me, it's
I
completely.
did not
unnecessary.
regain my fuel economy.
Well, and here's
When they were
what we
done, I
found
got my
out.
new DPF.
You got
Yeah.
a brand new DPF and not a cleaned one.
Correct, brand new from the dealer.
Oh, wow! And you didn't. That is interesting.
No,
A
did
lot
not
of
come back.
times.
It may have had more to do with the tires I changed, put new winter tires on.
Oh, that'll do
Yeah.
That, hey,
That'll do
but
it.
There
listen,
we go.
I bought some Virgin tires from Goodyear, and I put them on when they were brand new. I got the same fuel economy as my wore out Goodyear tires. So
Well,
they
now wait a
just
minute.
got better as they wore out.
No, you didn't.
Wait a minute. So one thing you have to remember when you go from a wore out tire that you think you're getting really great fuel mileage on, the diameter of that tire has changed.
You've changed
And
the RPM.
So your odometer is off.
Yep.
Everything is off. So your by hand calculations are not accurate if you have not adjusted the odometer and the ECM for the revs per mile. And you have to understand that. A lot of people make this mistake. So you have to be aware of that.
Joe, I knew somebody went with a set of 726 ELs, wore out to new 726 EL Bridgestones. And yeah, their fuel mileage took a big drop on paper.
Yeah, there's an inch of rubber worn off.
Right, exactly.
I,
So you got to be careful of that. It can throw the numbers for sure. I'm not saying that's what happened in this instance, but it can.
You had enough variables happening that you might as well just ignore any fuel mileage change, because we're probably not going to figure out what it was.
Okay, but I've tracked
Agreed.
my mileage very precisely, and I'd like to explain. I've noticed every time that before that I had put on fresh rubber, that my economy would drop. You know, just the paper. I'm not compensating for the tire. Just how I track it.
Sure.
My fuel economy drops. Okay. This time it didn't, and it got better as those tires wore. And I changed them. I put them on in the fall, take them off in the spring, and I wear out more tires in the summer, and then I put them back on in the fall, and they always were better than what I took. Even then the next year they were even better than when I took off the wore out tires. I put them back on for their second winter, and it was even better than when I took off the worn out tire. Then as spring came, they got better and better. I wore them all through the summer to wear them out. Then I had them recapped, and so while I was having them recapped, I had bought some more Virgins, and my fuel economy dropped like it had it with every other set of tires I had. And with those recapped, then I put them on the next spring, and put the recaps on, and I'm wearing out the recaps twice as fast as the other tires wore, and I did not retain the fuel economy when they were virgins now as their recaps. I was hoping the casings would keep the fuel economy. So I would have been better off buying new virgins, but I had to try it. And
Sure.
I'm careful. I did not put for very long. I did not put those recaps where my APU is in that front right position. I went to put virgins back there. I'm kind of concerned about my APU being taken out by a cap coming off.
Sure.
So I put virgins back in that position. But my chain box, that can go. I don't care. I just got antifreeze in it anyway. Keep changing that.
I had real good luck with running retreaded tires, and to me, the big key was running a tire monitor that you never ran them low on pressure or got them hot. I never saw the big hit or anything. As long as I got a fuel mileage retread again. I used to run them a lot back when I was flatbedding.
All right, Rick, we've got to get to some calls. We're going to head off. I'm not really sure where we're going today. Austin, where are you?
Hello?
Austin, where are you today?
Yes, sir. Now I'm in Mississippi.
Where were you before?
We
Louisiana?
were just out there in your neck of... Yeah.
Okay. All right. What's on your mind today?
This is
What can we help you
Austin
with?
and Aaron.
Oh, yeah. Hey, guys.
This is Austin and Aaron, the Crady brothers.
What are you guys up to?
Well, Aaron's sleeping.
Tell him to wake up.
Just calling in. Yeah. Wanted to talk about our Volvo that we got 2 months ago.
Okay.
And we were fortunate enough to be able to get a brand new one. It's a 25. And we are loving it. So I just wanted to be the one that called in about a Freightliner, since somebody else called in about their Freightliner.
Got it.
But yeah.
Well, now I'm offended. You're going to the other teller.
Well, then just hang up. Just hang up.
No.
So yeah,
Wait,
currently our
hey,
30
Henry.
day is 9.74 and our 60 day is 9.72.
Ah, congratulations. Good
In
stuff.
my mind, it seemed it should be better than that. But
How new is the truck?
it's 25. It had 0 miles on it. It now has 53,000 miles on it in 2 months.
You are now just getting that truck broke in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
we thought about that too.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
those are good
So
numbers.
a lot of
really.
times, when you do this, when you get close to that 60,000 mile mark, now you don't have to do this if it's in the budget, and you're looking to get every ounce of fuel efficiency you can out of it. I'd run the overhead on it.
Okay.
They're very sensitive to the overhead, so change the oil and run the overhead, and most likely you're going to see a nice little bump in fuel efficiency on that.
And you said do that at 60,000?
Well, yeah, you're fine. Yeah, anytime now. Yeah, you've run it enough to where all overheads, I don't care what engine it is, they'll all tell you, well, 150 on the first one and then like 300,000 after that. A new engine, when you run them in, there's a little accelerated wear right off the bat. That overhead's going to move. It's still probably well within spec, but it may not be optimal. And if money's tight, obviously don't do it. It doesn't need to be done, but it will most likely bump your fuel efficiency a little bit if you run that overhead.
Okay, so that's kind of along the same lines of doing an MD alignment. It's factory spec, but MD alignment so much better.
Right. Yeah, it's very similar.
Okay.
I run overhead every year, regardless of hours, regardless of miles. The overhead gets run once a year.
Okay. Well, we're a team, so that's why we've got 50,000 miles in 2 months, over 50,000. So
There you go.
we've been running hard trying to build the bank account back up after purchasing it. So
Maximize that asset.
Yeah.
but
That's right.
and the only thing we've done to it so far is we did do the air tabs and the MD alignment.
Good.
Now this comes with the bypass filter already on it, so we shouldn't have to do that. Or do you recommend just leaving it the way it is?
Well, on the brand new, and I'm not sure if it's the 25s or the 26s, but if you are over 7 miles a gallon, they have a 95,000 mile oil change interval without even having to sample or anything. So
Hey.
it's completely up to you. There's nothing wrong with a bypass. It's not going to hurt anything. You're probably going to be able to go a very long time
Right.
on your oil change, and if you're comfortable with that, the only thing I'd suggest, on being that it's a new engine, make sure that you have your oil sampling done on a regular basis and you have your ducks in a row, because if something happens, that's the first thing they're going to say is, I need to see your oil sampling. And if you don't have that, your warranty will be denied.
Hey, Joel, let's talk about something, because I agree.
How many miles did you say they were up to now, Joel?
95.
94.
Hold on.
95. I thought we were out there at 75.
Yeah, and that's what I want to talk about. So I agree with everything Joel just said. I would put an OPS on it, because I'm going to keep this thing for 1.5 million, and I'm going to really reduce my oil change intervals. But here's something else I'm wondering if the OEMs are going to address this or not. So Volvo is saying, if I'm getting more than 7 miles to the gallon, you can go 95,000 miles. And what happens when a couple thousand miles after I do my oil change, I get fuel dilution or coolant intrusion or dirt, and we don't know it, and 95,000 miles later, I've trashed an engine? Why aren't they recommending oil analysis on these long drain intervals?
I don't disagree, and I don't know if they do or don't. And I'll ask that question, because I've never asked the question. So I'll specifically ask that when I talk to the team. Are they recommending oil analysis for these extended drains, and see what they say?
Yeah, I agree. They're putting the filtration on that will allow us to go 95,000 miles, but not if something goes wrong.
I would agree with you, Kevin, and I'm surprised they don't that they don't make that be a requirement.
That's what
nothing like that was ever talked about.
I've never heard anybody talk about it, and I'm wondering why not. I'm all for extended drain. Now here we go again. I started talking about extending drains back in 1995. You don't know how much heat I have taken over this. Oh my God, what an idiot that guy is. Oil is cheap. Just change your damn oil. What is the matter with you? Why would you ever think about and here we are. Now the OEMs are telling us to go 100,000 miles, and they're not even asking for an oil sample.
Yep. So a couple of things here.
There's a common theme here, Kevin. You know, we all keep getting called idiots.
I know. And then somehow everything we've been saying for 30 years actually comes true.
So one of the issues at play here, Kevin, and I know you've said this multiple times, where you've never been able to see a difference in any of the oils that meet a manufacturer spec. You know, they all perform about the same. And I think you were right up until just recently.
I agree.
I think where the big difference in oils come these days is how thin and how fast they flow.
Yep.
And when you look at some of these PAO base oils, I mean, they flow almost as fast at -40 as they do at 100.
Yeah.
And we all know that the majority of engine wear occurs at startup. Just does.
Right.
So, you know, now they're really starting to balance the additive package. You know, we know that they're not putting in as much additives in oil today. The additive package seems to be on the lighter side, because a lot of the additives will tend to poison the emission system, right?
Right.
So they have to balance that wear versus the emission system, and one of the ways that they're doing it is they're using a better base oil, a full synthetic PAO type base oil that flows extremely well in the cold. And we're starting to see these crazy drain intervals, or what we considered crazy at one point is just going to become normal and commonplace. And it's you know, I think you were right when you had said, look, And look, everybody, here's one of the things that everybody says. Oh my God, the OEM spent $1 kajillion developing an additive package. That ain't necessarily true. What happens? The big oil companies go to a company like BASF.
Right.
BASF spends a
Right.
lot of money developing a bunch of different additive packages that meet certain group classifications.
Right.
Somebody like Rotella will go to BASF and say, hey, look, this is what we're trying to put together. They will collaborate on an existing package, tweak it a little bit, sell them that additive package, and off they go.
You mean there isn't all them guys with the lab coats that I see in the ads?
There's recipes, like Volvo has the VDS5 spec. And so there is a recipe for VDS5 spec oil that all the oil manufacturers, and you can buy it from several different supply. BASF is one. I forget. There's two. Atro, I think, is another company that does similar things to BASF, and so that's how that works. And I think it would surprise a lot of people. I know it's the common theme is the OEM spent $1 kajillion to develop this. Don't touch it. And I don't disagree with that, especially with some of the older stuff. But with today's stuff, the base oil is just as important as in fact, maybe even more important than the additive package, I think.
Well,
you go overboard on an additive package,
that's really no
and you're going to have
different.
problems with the emission system.
That's really no different than the fact that it was probably 25 years ago I started recommending synthetic oil as your base oil, and I justified it by, look, I know it's really expensive, but we do get better fuel economy. We know that. That's a proven. And with bypass filtration, we can make it last so long that the cost is negligible now. I've been saying that, and boy, you know how much heat I took for telling people to put $25 a gallon oil in their truck?
There's no doubt about it. Right now, Hot Shot Secret sells an oil for $55 a gallon. It's a PAO, top of the line base oil in it, and the advantage is it flows almost as fast cold as it does hot, and it's very shear stable. The PAO, like you said, all the molecules are the same size in it, so they're very, very shear stable. And when you add bypass filtration, like you talked about, shit lasts forever.
Yes,
it doesn't shear down, it doesn't get thick, it lasts literally forever. And you are exactly right. There will continue to be fuel efficiency improvements, and this is exactly why a lot of modern cars, like a Honda, runs a 0W16 engine oil.
Right.
So a lot of people will go, oh, but the wear is going to be horrible on that. So what you have to consider is where does the wear happen? It happens at startup. If you can flow the oil faster to critical parts, you don't need to have that extremely robust additive package to combat wear after the engine's running, because not that much wear occurs then.
Hey, Joe,
so it is a balancing act.
Let's think
about.
Well,
yeah, and when you ran them thicker oils in a race engine, which they don't even do anymore, they always heated them first before they started the engine.
Well, we have our evidence of all of this anyway. We now have diesel engines with 1 million+ miles on them, not consuming any oil.
I've got a couple in my brother's fleet. They have been on 5W30 their entire life. They're over 1 million miles. There's no blow by, and they don't use oil.
That's our proof right there that all of this that we've been talking about for 20 some years works.
And I'll tell you
well, you're just stupid like that Kevin guy, Joel.
I'll tell you what else I've done. We've had a couple of trucks that my brother let me play with, and we were going to see how far we could push the limits on oil. So we took Marvel Mystery Oil, which is really thin to begin with, and we cut it in at about 35%. We really thinned the engine oil down on an old D16 that we had, and it ran and ran and ran and ran and never had an oil related issue. That shit was practically water. I mean, we had it so thin. So we had a lot of confidence in 5W30 after knowing that we could virtually take this shit down to the consistency of water, and it still ran just fine. So,
Crazy.
and I don't recommend
the big
anybody else do
no,
that, because if
but-
something does go
No.
wrong, you're going to be on the hook for it. But
Yeah.
it's kind of
What
what I do.
it's
and
fun when you can
you
do
got to
that
push
kind
the
of
limits
stuff.
to understand what the limits are. Yes.
Well,
The big
Hey,
additive they
hold
cut
on,
back
Joel.
on a whole lot, which
Hold on.
hurts a lot of people with the classic cars, is the zinc, because the oils without the zinc, if it's flat tappet, cams don't like it, but everything's
No,
on
but
rollers now.
zinc is very hard on the emission system. When you get over so many parts per million, it wants to poison the emission
Well,
system.
yeah, even
It doesn't play well. Yes.
even
Joel,
gasoline engines, yes.
I'm going to go back to
A
something
lot
you
of the
said.
metallics.
I'm going to add to
Mhm.
it. We can't just push
Mhm.
the limits to find out what they are. We have to break the limits to find out what they are.
Well, yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Yes,
you gotta-
we got to
you
get
have to
kicked in the
break
ass
it
from
to
time
know.
to time
Right.
to understand where we have to kind of start to hold up a little bit and push the brakes.
Right.
I would suspect that we will see 5W20 heavy duty diesel engine oil or something in that range before long.
I think
don't-
so.
It's already out on. It's already out in the 3-liter Duramax.
Yeah, I done
They've
it 20
gone down.
years ago, like I said, with the D16, where we kind of made our own and didn't have a minute's worth of problems with it. So.
Yeah. All right. All right. Let's continue taking some calls here. Let's go to Montana. Wayne, welcome.
Thanks, guys. Since we got all the brain power today, I need a little advice on a possible gear change in my truck. Cross okay?
Let me get my
Yeah.
calculator
Yeah,
brought
go
up
ahead.
here so I can.
Well, I've got
Alrighty.
a Western. It's a Western Star, and it's got a DD15. Got a 10-speed manual and a 3.23 gear on the rear.
3.2.
That's a .73 overdrive, right?
Yes.
0.73. And what size tires do you have?
They're 295, 22.5.
So them are 513 revs or thereabouts. And the transmission ratio is 0.73. And what RPM are you normally running down the road at?
Well, right now at 65, I'm right about 1,300.
All right, let's see how accurate we are here. So I'm coming up with 64 mile an hour at 1,300 RPM with the specs that you just laid out. So very, very close. All right.
Yeah. So,
And what are we thinking about going to?
well, I that's what I need help with. It's supposed those DD15s are supposed to be a downsped engine.
Not all of them.
Well,
The
at that
architecture
point,
is downsped. Yeah.
yeah, at that point, when that truck was built, it probably was downsped. It's just that they've sped down farther.
There you go.
Well,
what year? What year is it? What year is the truck?
2016.
It's a 2016, and it's what horsepower and torque?
It's 475 on the horsepower, and I think the torque is 1550. That's
Okay,
what I
so
had to check.
now a 475 1550 power curve is not a downsped power curve by any stretch of the imagination. The torque is low, the horsepower is relatively high. That means peak is going to occur relatively high on the curve. Now, the engine itself, and I think Henry would agree with this, is definitely capable of being downsped, but that is not a downsped curve. So it's going to be a little weak for horsepower on the front side because of the power curve that's loaded into that engine.
Yeah, I wouldn't on that one. I wouldn't change it much past 308 with that 10-speed. That would put you at a 224 overall. But I would question whether I would change it because I don't think your ROI would be there unless you found a
wrecked
truck with 308.
A 308 gains you 3 miles an hour. And that's it. But you're
Yeah,
not going to have a lot of power on the front side of that power curve, and you're probably, especially with a manual transmission, you're going to be pretty disappointed with it driving it. It's not going to feel. It's not. Yeah. It's not going to feel all that spectacular as far as power goes. A 475 1550, in my experience, and Henry can probably talk to this much better on the Detroit side than what I'll be able to. But over on the Volvo side, we're going to use that more as a vocational power curve, like what you'd find in a dump truck that requires a little more RPM and momentum when you're on soft ground and going through mud, where you want that actual horsepower to occur higher in the RPM range. It's to me, that's not a really nice power curve to have in an over-the-road engine.
As my general rule with people re-gearing them with the DD series engine, as I put it, they're pretty happy fuel economy wise, if as long as you're not a light switch driver in any case. But they're pretty happy all the way to just right at 1400. They don't like to go past 1400 and deliver the big numbers. 13, you're not that far out of it. You know, you can get it down to 1200 and do better, but your ROI is just not going to be there.
Right.
You could make it that it would did better, but I think you'd spend more than you'd ever return on it.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm getting by with it okay. It just, And I mean, it isn't get that bad on fuel economy. I was just trying to get the RPMs down to get it to last a little longer, but if that's not going to work, won't do it.
No, you'll be fine. I know plenty that were geared with 250 directs. Matter of fact, I know of a 250 direct that the guy just retired out of that had 1,200,000 on it, still wasn't using any oil. I mean, and he drove fairly slow, but he was at 9.8 lifetime, and that was a 16.
Oh, darn. Okay. So if the torque was higher, that would make quite a bit of difference on the spec of that. Kind of what I'm picking up.
Not necessarily. Whether you're making torque or horsepower, you got to burn fuel to make it.
Okay.
And if you're geared shorter, you don't need as much torque or horsepower because you're overcoming it with gear multiplication.
Right. Well, it really dies off on a hill. I mean,
okay, you say it dies off on a hill. How long have you been driving this truck?
I've had it about a month and a half. Compared to
so part of that, and it's probably geared taller than where you were before, but part of that, the audio track's not there. They don't sound like they're pulling because they do it so darn quietly compared to what they did before. I had a driver I was training, and he kept telling me how it was dying on this hill. And we were loaded up heavy, and I said, but look at the truck ahead of you. He says, we're gaining on it. I said, exactly. So to know how much you really have there when you're driving it on the pedal, my challenge to you is when you're going up a hill, when you feel like it's dying, see how far you can leave off the throttle and not lose any speed. I did that with a Walmart driver. He was surprised. He came back 50% on the throttle. He wasn't gaining speed, but he wasn't losing any.
What were you driving before you got into this truck? What did you have?
Well, I had a similar, it was a Cascadia with the same motor, just a little bit lower gear. It was a 342, but same transmission.
Right.
And
so a 342 would have been equivalent to a 250 direct. So you're geared up a little taller. It's not going to be as responsive in top gear. When you gear things up taller, that's just the way it goes. But the good news is most of the country's flat, and where it's not flat, half of it's downhill. So you don't spend literally that much time going uphill. But it's the most memorable.
Well, the lane I travel in, I have several pretty steep hills just before I get home, and it's just the last leg of my trip is always way slower.
I get it.
Which is fine. I just wanted some advice. I got, you guys are the brain power, so
There you go.
But try that when you're going up one of them hills. See how far you can pull your foot back off that throttle and not lose any speed.
All right. We're heading off to Oklahoma this time. Paul, good morning.
Howdy. So when that guy leaves home, wouldn't he be going down 3 big hills when he leaves home, which should square it back up to about average, wouldn't it?
There you go.
Just a
It
thought.
should.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he maybe goes the other way. I don't know. So only assholes that are full of shit have been stocking up on toilet paper. And there's plenty of them around. So, Henry, if you were going to spec a Western Star car hauler with that little short, fat 295/60 on the drive axle, which has a rotation of 553, I found out. What rear end ratio would you get? I don't really know.
Oh my God!
Western Star.
Contact me on private message. I'm not in a position to do the calculation on that, nor am I around that time.
Calculator running right now. You said it's 553.
553 for that 295/60.
Okay, what are they telling you to run? What are they recommending for a ratio?
Well, I have no idea, but because I'm starting to get curious.
Henry, what's the lowest? What's the lowest ratio that they put? 2.16. Is that as low as you guys go?
Yeah, 216.
Okay, let's see what 216 with that tire does, just for shits and giggles.
And when you started putting an odd combination like that, you'd have to get approval. But yeah.
Right, and your
I'm
transmission.
just curious. At
0.78.
I don't even know what they're putting them at what they said.
Well, hell, that's not going to be too awful bad. So if you have a 216, and let's go at 1100 RPM, because a car hauler is going to take a little. That's 70 mile an hour at 1100 RPM with a 0.78 overdrive on a 216. If they'll do that.
Yeah. 216, 228, all down in that area is where you would probably get happy then.
But it definitely has to be overdrive though, not direct.
Okay.
Right.
Because one of the guys, the company I'm leased to, this guy, he's got a totally different business model than me. He's been leased onto this company for about 8 years, and he's on his 6th truck, 5 of which have been brand new. So but the last one he got was a day cab Freightliner SD 114, and he kept it for a year. He decided, man, I kind of need that little sleeper for occasionally, because he said it's not the most comfortable to sleep in a Volkswagen. But
gotcha.
He said that Freightliner that he had last year, the DD13, but it had a 13-speed Eaton transmission, automated manual. Well, the truck he got now, it's got a Detroit 12-speed transmission, and I don't know what he don't know what the rear end ratio is either. He said it, even from brand new, he said it outpulls that other truck by far. Yeah.
The one with the Eaton does?
No, the 12-speed, the Detroit transmission, one he has now, it outpulls the one with that had the 13-speed.
So
but I don't
part
know what
of the reason, well, the 13-speed on the Eaton is going to be a 0.73 overdrive versus the 0.78 that you have in the DT12, or even possibly a direct drive in the DT12. So my assumption is you're running a few more RPM. He's got a little bit more horsepower on tap at any given moment, so it feels better underfoot. That would be my guess.
Okay. Yeah, well, to him the truck is just a tool, but
right. Yep.
He's one of the top, consistently one of the top revenue grosses. I don't know what his net is, but he's a worker. I'll give him that. But he told me, he says, I don't ever want to own a truck. He said, I'll just lease one. And he said, every year or every second year, he said, I'll go get me a brand new one. But because he's a top producer on the revenue, they don't hesitate. So the last two, they said, well, do you want anything special on it? He said, yeah, I want to choose the color. So he chose green. And then he'd been having trouble with the 19.5 trailer tires, you know, cupping out and hard to get to and expensive and everything. So he said, I want 22 5s on the trailer. Okay, we'll get 22 5s on the trailer. Well, then when it showed up, it had 22 5s on the trailer, but it still had 19 5s on the truck. But because he didn't, he don't spec it. So he still had 3 different size tires, but I'm not sure what he's got on this new one he got now. He may have got all 22 5s. So,
Gotcha.
So
life
with it being a car carrier, Joel, I missed part of that because I lost the call. But with the higher amount of drag pulling the cars, I would even think about it. Have to think it's a different application to me. I might even go back as far as a 241 with the overdrive.
Well, they should be able to calculate required horsepower for a car carrier for the aerodynamic drag, and then you should be able to line that up and get that just perfect. You shouldn't have to guess on that. I would hope not anyway, because you don't want to make a mistake on that. So.
No,
yeah,
but that
we definitely have a lot of drag. So yeah,
for sure.
Most of the freight we're hauling now, because this freight liner is so low, he has one advantage over me. He can still drive a bigger SUV over the hood and still get down to height, where I got to put mine on backwards. So
there you go.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Slightly more.
All right, we are going to wrap this up for today. I left a little bit of time here at the end. Anything you guys want to close with? I have something.
You know,
I don't have anything.
Starting to think, I do. I think it's good to surround yourself with idiots.
That seems to be, seems to be a strategy.
It's working out well for me because
that's kind of what.
And I'm saying that facetiously, obviously.
Yeah, well, it's kind of what my close is going to be about. So I've been thinking about this. We talked about, all the pushback we get on fuel mileage or all of these things we talk about, how frustrating it can be. We all know there's something else we deal with. When we get a call and fuel mileage has changed and everybody wants to point to, well, this happened. The one thing we always have to remember is how many variables are at play here and how difficult it can be to try to weed out all the variables when you only have one truck that you're working with. It's really hard to weed out all the variables when we're looking at 10,000 data points. So we always have to remember that we may not know why fuel mileage changed for that week or that month or why it changed. We can't figure it. There's a lot of variables. Almost every topic.
You know what helps on that, Kevin?
Go ahead, Henry.
Well, when I had 5 owner-operators, we built a buddy system with that. We ran the same routes and got fuel at the same places. And what we found was if one truck's fuel mileage dropped and the others didn't, they were working into a problem. But what we found with getting the fuel at the same place, that all of our fuel mileage would pretty much move in the same manner. It was like having the control truck on the test track.
Well, I talked about this for years. It's why I think I was able to prove a lot of things on fuel mileage when I was at, when I got to the point at FedEx in Orlando where I had 3 trucks on the same run every day. And they left within an hour of each other every day. They got fuel at the same place every day. We had enough consistency that we could start to prove some things. And I would do a test truck a control truck when I could. So we might make the change on 2 trucks and not on the 3rd truck and use it as the control. And there were times where we made the modification to 2 trucks and their fuel mileage went up. But it also went up on the 3rd truck that didn't get the modification. And it was about the same gain.
Right.
So then you start thinking, okay, it was weather, or it's a time of year where all of our loads were lighter. We realized there had to
Little
be
better fuel.
yeah, that we realized there had to be a variable there that we weren't accounting for, because how did all 3 trucks change the same amount? So it's
Well, in our case, our weights were consistent. On that
part
route,
of
so that made it even a little easier.
the one downside we had in our system was we never knew the weight at all. And so I couldn't take into account
No.
weight. We just knew a percentage of what the trailer was loaded, but that doesn't tell us anything about weight.
Yeah.
My point is,
Yeah. We were flatbedding back then. We were usually, after we got loaded up with wallboard, it was, can I get that cup of coffee and not be overweight?
yeah, no doubt. So you guys know how
So I've got
frustrating
one.
that can be. Go ahead, Joel.
Mhm. I was gonna say I just had one quick little blurb about this whole thing. So I had a guy that he hit me up on one of my posts and said, "Yeah, well, I run 750 miles a day every day, and you can't do that at the speeds that you're running at." So my question, or I guess I want to know from the listeners and from everybody else, do you really want to work that hard? I've got no desire to run 750 miles every day. If I have to work that damn hard to make a living, I don't want no part of it.
Yeah,
And so
I agree.
just always keep that in mind with the fuel mileage thing too. If you get better fuel efficiency, you don't necessarily have to run as many miles
That's
and
correct.
still make the same money.
That is absolutely.
Now you may
Joel,
get home a little. You may get home a little later at the end of the day, possibly, but you're going to have more time throughout the year to yourself because you will make you're working smarter, not harder. And I guess that's the
let's
key.
take that to its next
Joe,
logical
you
conclusion.
know, we've had that conversation on my regular run, which I'm not on. It makes it from a 4-day to a 5-day week when I start running them high mileage days. But I'm pretty cool with taking an extra whole day at home.
Well, and
Sure.
here's the other thing we have to think about. What they're really admitting is, look, I'm just going to make up for being efficient by just working myself to the bone. That's a horrible approach.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, I'll put somebody out there as an example that we talk about all the time. Matt ran like 160,000 miles last year. That is a lot of work, but he's also one of the most efficient that I know. So for him, it's not, he's not trying to make up for his lack of efficiency by working that hard. He's as efficient as he can possibly be. To me, it actually makes more sense than to work harder. If you're really inefficient, why would you want to bust your ass?
Yeah,
you're not profiting much here.
You're digging you're digging your
Right.
hole even deeper is what you're doing.
Right.
Well,
But if,
both sides are very important. You know, that's to me, that's the whole problem with a lot of parts of the industry, like tankers. We don't want to do nothing about aerodynamics because it's all about putting another gallon in the trailer. Yeah, but you burn 3 extra gallons of fuel.
if I'm really, really efficient, I have a bigger incentive to go work harder because I'm going to profit more when I do it. And they get that completely backwards. So now imagine, we know there are a lot of variables in fuel mileage. Imagine how many variables there are in human health and weight loss.
Yeah.
This one, and the reason I bring this up is because one of the arguments I've had a very hard time arguing against when we talk about, is it better to eat a lot of animal products or is it better to eat a lot of vegetables and plants? And the one argument that the plant side has always used, have you ever heard of the phrase blue zones?
No.
Okay, so blue zones refer to these. There are a couple places around the world where they claim that people they live to be 100 more than anywhere else. The big one is Okinawa in Japan. They have a lot of people that live to be 100. Sardinia in Europe is a place where a lot of people live to be 100. And they've made these claims over the years, and I just assumed they were true, that though all these blue zones supposedly are very plant-based diets. Well, a scientist just won a Nobel Prize because he has now proven everything they've told us about the blue zones is fraudulent. He won a Nobel Prize for this. So this isn't some whacked out blogger on social media claiming this. This is somebody who did enough work that they won a Nobel Prize. But here's how bad it is. First off, they said this might have been one of our clues. In 2008, a company was formed called Blue Zones Marketing LLC. If this is just real data, why do we need a marketing company for this? That now you start to wonder.
Wow.
So it turns out, listen to how bad this gets. In Sardinia, where supposedly all the centenarians live, once you account for the fact that most of them are in fact dead, but their family continued collecting their pensions. It turns out,
love it.
if you go back and they figured out this fraud and how it was happening, once they changed the numbers, they are now like 44th in the world for longevity, not first or second or third. They are way down at the bottom of the ranking.
Oh, Jesus.
Here's another one.
Wow.
Costa Rica is one of these blue zones. The same thing happened in Costa Rica and Greece. At one point, Greece was paying pensions to 9,000 centenarians and found out that 72% of them had died long ago.
That is funny. That is just plain funny. Here's what I can tell you about this, Kevin. And I played with this, like you back in the day. I used to work out like a mad dog when I was younger. I used to really, really be into working out. And for 1 year, I done the vegetarian thing. And I will tell you, that was the most miserable year of my life. I felt, it's hard to explain other than saying I felt very feminine. I did not like how I felt. I was down to 209 pounds. My bench, I used to be a kind of a bench press fanatic. At one point I was benching 425 pounds.
That is
when
incredible.
I went on that vegetarian bullshit, I was down to like 275 on my bench and was struggling with, and I hated it. I hated it. And so finally, I wanted to lose some weight and, kind of get the body. I was never had the bodybuilder's cut and definition. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna just go vegetarian. I'm gonna get shredded. Nah, it didn't work. And you feel like hell. And I hated it. Absolutely hated it. And finally I just gave up and said, I'm never doing that again. So I don't, obviously everybody's got a different, metabolism and people react to things differently. But for me, it was horrible.
Yeah, not much. We've proven that the whole genetic differences are almost non-existent. That there's some minor differences in the way people process food and energy and metabolism, but it really is minor, and it shouldn't even be talked about. It's actually a distraction.
And then,
because for one thing, you can't change it. But two, we shouldn't even talk about it. It's just a distraction.
Yeah.
Right.
The funny one is with that, Kevin, and then there was my grandfather, whose main staple of his diet was Little Debbie's oatmeal pie and smoked pipes since he was 7 years old. And no pipe until he was 89. No, he said cigarettes were bad. But not a pipe.
Do you know one of the factors? Because we hear these stories a lot, but let's think about the story that starts with my grandfather. Well, first off, what year was your grandfather born?
I want to say it was 1906.
Yeah. So we're talking about somebody who really had a big head start before we bastardized our entire food supply.
Well, I always figured if he hadn't done what he done, he might still be here and be like 120.
Possibly, that's right. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that when your grandfather was growing up, he was not eating bagels and sugar-laden cereal and orange juice for breakfast.
No, but ever since I could remember, the other staple if he was cooking a meal was Chef Boyardee raviolis in the can.
Well, there's a problem, but like I said, he had a
Oh
head start
my.
because now, look, every
But
year.
I'm not agreeing with what he did. I think he would have made it over 100. To
Well,
be honest,
that's the
I'm not
belief now.
I'm not condoning his diet.
Yes, please don't, because yeah.
But Kevin,
No, absolutely not.
Go ahead, Joel.
I have got to get with you at some point because I have had issues since my surgery with my arthritis is just going crazy. Now we talked about my diet wasn't quite up to par, and I went back and got hardcore, got rid of all the grain and stuff, and something has changed. I don't know what. I don't feel the same, and my body isn't reacting to the straight up carnivore the way that it did before. And I guess I got to get with you and find out what the hell's going on. Because normally, if I got hardcore carnivore, it solved everything, and it's just not working like it did before.
Well, we can work together as close
as it's all since my surgery.
I'll help you with this, but I can probably give you something to at least try. And by the time we get together next week, you'll know whether or not it's working. One of the things we have noticed that has shifted some over the last 10 years. There was a time where we talked about keto constantly, and then carnivore came along. And it was a good progression, and I get it. And I think we should be eating a lot of animal products, almost exclusively animal products. So I'm all for carnivore. But one of the mistakes I see, and it's not really a mistake, I think we were just learning. Sometimes when we use the word carnivore and we really focus on the animal products, we end up with too much lean protein. And I tell people all the time, make sure you're getting lots of good fat, and don't focus so much on the protein. You're going to get plenty of protein when you're eating like this. Let's make sure we have enough fat in here, and people usually start feeling better.
We talk. Yeah, we talked about that, and so that's what I done. I went out and I bought a couple jars of the Fat Works beef tallow.
Yeah,
and I was doing bone broth, and I was putting butter and.
Okay.
I was just loading everything up. I bought the Primal mayonnaise, the avocado oil mayonnaise, and was eating bacon and putting that mayonnaise with avocado. I was putting because that was high in fat.
Then if that didn't do it. If that didn't change anything, we're probably going to, believe it or not, we're probably looking at some sort of altered gut microbiome. We're probably going to have to focus on your gut.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. And here,
I don't know what they done as far as medications.
I'll tell you exactly what
when they opened me up.
They have to load you up with antibiotics. They have to. It's part of surgery. I mean, and I'm not against that, because if you don't, you might kill somebody with an infection. This is one of those times where I get it.
Sure.
The surgery has to happen. Surgeries are really hard on our body, and there is a lot of not just antibiotics. That's a big one. But many of the drugs that are pain medication is really hard on our gut microbiome. And there's pain medication involved and antibiotics involved.
They were
right.
Every 3 hours they were pumping me up with shit. So that's probably what's going on. I'm probably a wreck inside because everything that I done pre-surgery that worked so it's none of it's doing anything.
That's what's changed.
And it's pissing me off. I'm struggling with it. I'm like, I feel like this isn't right. So
start adding lots of probiotic foods. So lots of fermented vegetables. If you can find a really good quality, no sugar yogurt, that works. Making your own yogurt is the best, but lots of fermented foods, and you can buy a bunch of them in the store now. It's much more common to be able to go in and find
Sure.
real sauerkraut, real pickles, all that. That's where I'd start. I would probably also add 2 probiotics. So like a good,
Okay.
multi, like a 7-strain, good quality probiotic, and then what they call a soil-based probiotic, which just means we're getting the bacteria from the soil itself. And it's just a slightly different. But I would start there.
Keep
So how
the
many
fat
callers do we
high
have
and
on the
then-
line
and then-
now, Kevin?
None.
And then add the
I
probiotics.
turned the phones off because I knew when I started talking about this, everybody would call, but I don't want to. It's not really health day. I just had some things I wanted to close with.
So, all right, I will do that. I'll keep the fat up,
Yeah.
and I'll throw in some of the fermented stuff, and I'll hit
No.
the probiotics and see what's going on. And just one other thing, I know I've talked to you in the past about my mom. She's got memory issues, and they had her on
Statins.
3 different frickin'. Now they're
Okay.
for anxiety.
Oh,
And I
SSRIs.
can't say the name of them, but we talked about the oil, the
Seed oils.
shit with THC and
CBD oil.
THC and CBD oil. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I bought her CBD oil, and I've got her in 2.5 weeks completely off prescriptions, and she doesn't even realize what's going on, but she is doing way better than what the prescriptions were.
Isn't that awesome?
Running CBD oil.
Yeah.
Yeah, that because she was taking 3 fluoxetine and 3 buspirone every day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But what a mess.
And had been doing it for like 2 years.
What a mess.
And was just a complete mess. And I've got her weeded off that and doing much better, getting her off that bullshit. So
all right, one more thing, and this was a health topic. That's why I waited until the end today, and we got through all our calls. We've been talking a lot for a long time. Our big focus was you got to get grains out of your diet. I think we finally convinced people of that. It's pretty well accepted now that grains just aren't healthy for us. People do way better without them. Then, I started hearing doctors and practitioners that I really respected saying, look, the grains were bad. Sugar was bad. We all know that. We get that. But these seed oils are the worst. And I was thinking, well, yeah, I know they're not good, and I gave them up, but are they really that bad? Turns out they are. And we are learning more and more about here was one that just blew me away the other day. I just read this study a couple days ago, and I've been wanting to talk about it, and Wednesday was just really busy and I didn't get to it. I've told you about the fact that once you get seed oils out of your diet, it takes a while. That's one of the reasons I think we're not learning this stuff quickly. The seed oils, I've heard up to 4 years to clear these from your body. And I talked about that issue of people who have been sunburnt their whole life, I don't burn anymore at all. I can go out in the sun, no shirt on, no sunscreen, no nothing, direct sun, 8 hours a day, and I don't burn. That is so incredible to me. I still have a hard time believing it. And it's because of seed oils, but it doesn't happen right away. So I would have never thought that I can go outside until I read it somewhere and people started talking about this, and it happens across the board. I've talked to so many people on this, but here's something else. The people that have been listening to the health show for a long time are going to remember this. One of the things that almost everybody says when they really clean up their diet, the way alcohol affects them changes dramatically. And I went through this. I was there's
no doubt about that.
I was a 1 or 2 glass of wine a night drinker for 20 some years. And I drank wine for a reason. It was very relaxing at the end of the day. I'm all wound up. I'm thinking, I'm talking, I'm rushing around all day. And then when I wanted to wind down, that's what alcohol did. It just gave you that nice little mellow relaxation. And I felt good when I drank it. That's why I drink it every night. But all of a sudden, I was not feeling good at all. I mean, a little bit of alcohol made me feel horrible. I was like, what is going on? So I
Yeah.
basically just quit. I never said I'm a non-drinker. And if I went to dinner with somebody, I'd have a glass of wine and I'd be like, I don't feel good. Why do I keep doing this? So for the most part, I had quit.
Yep.
Well, just recently, this summer, kind of, for whatever reason, I would just grab a bottle of wine once in a while, and I was drinking a little more than before, but not a lot, not every night, maybe once a week, and 1 or 2 glasses. But I realized something happened. I started getting that good feeling again from alcohol, and that's probably why I started doing it a little more often. And I thought, okay, what changed? What changed the first time that made me feel so bad? And now why am I back to where alcohol kind of feels good again? I don't know if this has anything to do with it or not, but this study was really interesting. We all know that alcohol is really damaging to your liver, right?
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that it's not all that damaging to your liver. And I still have to do a lot of research on this, but this was a well-run study, the first one that I read. It turns out that alcohol is only damaging to your liver when linoleic acid is present. So in this study, it turns out it was a combination of the alcohol and having linoleic acid present that created the damage. If you took away the linoleic acid, the damage wasn't occurring to the liver. Guess where we get all of our linoleic acid? Seed oils.
Oils, yeah. So having a beer and French fries probably isn't
Bad
a good idea.
idea.
Most
Right.
bars, right?
Right. And
Wow.
yeah. So I'm not saying that alcohol is good for us. I'm not going to go down that road. I don't want. A lot of people have really cut back on
No.
drinking or stopped in the last couple of years. It's been a trend. I think it's a good trend, and I don't want to talk anybody out of that. But it's pretty interesting to know that maybe it wasn't just the alcohol. That these seed oils are really
Well,
that toxic.
I'm exactly like you. When I get hardcore, or in the past anyway, when I'd get hardcore carnivore alcohol, I mean, I feel
Ooh,
just like total dog shit, and
awful.
I just
Yeah.
I essentially quit. Yeah, just absolutely awful, and wouldn't even drink a beer. You know what I
Right.
mean? I'd go over to my brother's. Everybody's having
Right.
a cold beer. You want a beer? No, I'll get a water. You know,
Yep.
and just because I'd one beer and I would feel like shit for 2 days.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, yeah,
Yep.
I often kind of wondered about that myself.
So now I'm wondering,
Hmm.
has it changed back now because I have cleared those seed oils out of my body?
That's a good question, isn't it?
Because if that combination does damage to your liver, there's a good reason why it makes us feel so bad. Your liver's really important. If your liver's not functioning right, you're not going to feel good.
Sure.
Now I have an
Interesting.
excuse to keep drinking wine to test this theory.
There you go.
I'm
It
gonna
sounds,
need-
it
I'm gonna
sounds
need more
viable to
testing.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need more testing.
Kevin, you got to do the hard work.
That's right. I have to take my own advice
Yeah,
here.
You got to, yeah, you got to remove the cork on your own. I mean, the struggles you go through to get this information.
There you go.
We'll know what happens when Kevin has grapes next year.
I have
Kevin's Ripple.
I have a ton of grapes that I have to figure out what to do with right now. I have like 4 different varieties of grapes growing over on the property. I have grapes everywhere. So I think I'm going to have to make wine for my testing.
Kevin's Carnivore Ripple. How's that?
There you go. We'll call it Cripple.
Complete with a brown paper bag. Yeah, there you go.
That's right.
That's funny.
All right, guys. Let's go enjoy our
Hey,
weekend.
great show today.
It was. I enjoyed it. Had a good time. Thanks to Joel and Henry as always. We will see you back here next week. Have a great weekend. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work and master the journey.